And we're on. This is the great classic rock debate. I'm Kenny.
And I'm Paul with zero qualifications. Count
And
them
I,
all.
I guess we're Steveless for now, or maybe for the rest of this evening. I don't know. We haven't heard from him, but we hope he's doing okay. And if he jumps in, that's perfectly fine.
We're Steveless in Seattle. Ronaldo, we're not in
Very
Seattle.
good, very good. We talk anything and everything classic rock. We're longtime classic rock dudes, and we just enjoy the subject matter. We love the artists. We love the music. We try to keep it interesting and have fun. If you're watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our sister channel, The Great Classic Movie Debate. And I think we're inching closer to a great classic sports debate. So I don't know when we'll find time for all these things, but man, there's so much good sports talk that we could be doing. So, well, we'll cross that bridge. Anyway, we talked earlier. We said, hey, let's talk about Rush tonight because we've been doing the show for over a year now, and we've mentioned them in passing, but we really haven't done a good show on Rush, and we should do that. So that's what I would like to do for tonight. However, I do want to mention something first, and you're going to get such a kick out of this. So a few weeks back, maybe a month ago, we talked about that song, Cherokee People, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Your favorite.
To me, it's the equivalent of fingernails on a chalkboard times a million. Song. Okay. Yeah, I hate that song. It is the epitome of liberal claptrap, whatever. But to be fair, it was a #1 song in 1971. Do you recall the name of the artist?
Yeah, Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Okay, that was
just Paul Revere.
No, well, no. Technically, the lead singer of Paul Revere and the Raiders was Mark Lindsay, and he started doing solo albums because Paul Revere and the Raiders was a 60s band. They were kind of fading. So it was actually his second album.
You know what happened? I know what happened. Paul Revere got caught by the British and they couldn't record anymore. Sorry, I had to throw that in.
In case you're wondering how I tolerate him, it's not easy. Anyway, so Mark Lindsay, on his second solo album, he recorded this song, Cherokee People, which, by the way, you correctly identified by its full name. Do you remember?
The Lament of the Cherokee Nation.
Nation, yes. Wow. You are a walking encyclopedia of surprises.
Of nothing.
Yeah, well, the fact that you knew that blows me away. So anyway, here's where I'm leading to. You've heard me many times talk about another YouTube channel, a guy who calls himself the Professor of Rock.
Yes, I have.
His videos are fantastic. I cannot encourage everybody strongly enough to watch the videos from the Professor of Rock. They're just full of information, and he is clearly a passionate guy who loves music. Whereas we're a little more focused on classic rock, he's a little more general with rock, pop, R&B, and everything. But his videos are great. And 5 days ago, he made a video. It's about 20 minutes long. I encourage you to watch it. And it's titled something like, "This guy was kidnapped and held and forced to write a song." Oh. Thank you. And so when I saw that, I'm like, wait a second, who in the world?
There she is.
There she is. Who in the world was kidnapped and forced to write a song? Okay, this story is unbelievable. Okay, now the songwriter in question, his name is John Loudermilk. And he's been writing songs from back in the 50s. He recorded a few songs himself, had a couple of very minor hits. I think songs that none of us would have said we've ever heard before. But he had written songs that other artists had turned into at least medium-sized hits back in the 50s. And so in 1959, he wrote this song, Cherokee People, Cherokee Nation, whatever you want to call it. And it was recorded by some artist, and when you hear that original version, it's pretty easy to understand why that was never a hit. And then it's not good. And then sometime in the 60s, it was recorded by some British artist, which I kind of get a kick out of, because if you're British, what's your tie-in with the Cherokee people other than I'm a white liberal and I don't associate with all those other white people. So I don't know, but this British artist recorded it, and again, it fizzled out and never went anywhere. Okay, so when Mark Lindsay, vocalist for Paul Revere and the Raiders, decided to record this song on his album, the songwriter John Loudermilk, I guess in his mind, he's thinking we need an urban legend.
Oh boy,
we need something that will arouse and stir up interest in this song and have people going, what? Are you kidding me? What? So he fabricates this story about getting kidnapped by 3 white liberals and held hostage and held at gunpoint. And when they find out he's a songwriter, they tell him, we'll let you go if you write a song. One of our causes is the Cherokee people. And if you write a song for the Cherokee people, we will let you go. So he sat down and furiously scribbled out this song for the Cherokee people, as you correctly called the Lament of the Cherokee Nation, which he then gave to Mark Lindsay, who took it to #1 in 1971. It was the biggest, up until Michael Jackson, I think up until Billie Jean, this was the biggest selling single ever on Columbia Records. Okay.
Really? Wow.
Huge, huge. Yeah. Which, you know, for me, I'm still like, what? Anyway, so it turns out he concocted the story just to sort of create an urban legend that would, and I don't know if that was ever even, if that story was ever even told. I was too young really to remember. But as much as that song has its own place, like it's unique in so many different ways. I say that not as a dig, even though I don't like the song. It's, you know, it's unique in so many ways. It's even more unique the fact that it has an urban legend attached to its creation, which turned out to be totally false. Anyway, so I thought you would get a kick out of that, because I know that you, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you like the song, yeah?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And a couple things here. I just realized that Stephen King stole that plot, and that was the plot of Misery. You realize that, right?
Well, that was the plot of Misery. You're right.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So Stephen King stole it from this guy.
Yeah.
Sue Stephen King. That's a joke.
Yeah, he's another liberal who I don't like.
So one day Kenny and I were at the swap shop, and you were picking on me, kind of being mean for whatever, this, that, the other thing. And I said, keep it up. And you start. So I went right next to you. It was 100 degrees. I started, Cherokee people.
You did.
And you're like, oh no. And I kept singing it. You're like getting mad.
Stop. Yeah.
And I'm like, I told you to stop.
That's true. Yeah. 1985, the Fort Lauderdale swap shop. You were singing as loud as you could, Cherokee Nation. And I was willing to sell my soul to get you to stop. So
but you started, and I told you I was going to make you stop.
You gave me fair warning. Yeah, you did. Okay. Anyway, so that's our little lead in tonight. It has nothing to do with Rush.
Wow. But that sounds like the urban legend of, we've covered this, of Ohio players love roller coasters.
Yes. Yes.
That's
oh geez, we'll just give a quick version of that, because that is a great one. I was 15 when that song "Love Roller Coaster" by Ohio Players was out, and it was all over radio. It was just getting played all the time. And I don't recall who told me first, but somebody said, you know the story about that scream in the song, right? And I'm okay. There was no internet. There was no Google. You have to mention that, because otherwise people think, what are you, stupid? Why didn't you just Google it?
1976 or 70. What year was it? 75?
I think 75 or 76. Yeah. So anyway, it spread like wildfire that during the recording session, anybody watching this right now is going to go, you have to be an imbecile to believe that. That may be true, but it was 50 years ago. And
we were kids.
We were kids. Yeah, we were dumb kids, and it spread like wildfire. You believed it because everybody said it. So the story was that during the recording of the song Love Roller Coaster, they needed to get this really authentic scream for the female scream sound that was going to be played during the break, during the instrumental break, which is going to sound like somebody screaming when they're on a roller coaster. And so they stabbed a girl in order to get that scream. Now, I will confess that when I think about it now, it's probably not the most effective way to get a scream, I guess. I mean, the person could die, but not necessarily scream. It seems like, but a few years back, 10 years ago, something like that, VH1 did one of those behind the music or whatever, one of those historical pieces about the Ohio players. And when they asked them about the thing, they were completely unaware of it. They had never even heard it. Yeah. And so I think that was something that caught on in white neighborhoods. Because I've asked black people and they've all said, no, I've never heard that before.
But I was going to say the exact opposite at Coniston, because so white people said it, and I had this guy that you actually know that anyway, and he's like, yeah, and they were holding her down and they were stabbing her, and they ran out of tape, so they couldn't do another cut. Right. There was all these ridiculous things. You're like,
right. And I mean, it seems absurd when I think about it now, but when I heard it in 1975, I'm like, oh my God. And I believed it, hook, line, and sinker. And I went around telling everybody. So, and most of the people who I told, they said, yeah, I already knew that.
So now this is going to cause you to think.
All right, go ahead.
When you were at Auburn, did you ever hear that? I never heard it at Auburn. So this is a fact. There should be a book about this. If you and I are in South Florida, and you and I went to our elementaries or junior highs were let's say 20 miles apart, how could that have even how could that have happened? If you start to actually analyze this, you think about it.
The urban legend?
Yeah, but how could that have spread from my school and your school 30 miles apart? How?
I don't think it was just a South Florida thing.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, how?
Well, here I'm just going to use this as an example, and I think it probably. So first of all, the municipal basketball league that I played in, the guys on my team represented 3 or 4 different schools.
Oh, really?
So if I told that story at basketball practice, well, it dispersed, fairly quick. Also, you think about telling it at Thanksgiving when you've got a bunch of family members there who now represent not just different geographical locations, but different schools and different parts. So I could see how that, how that spread pretty quick.
Like, if you do that, you're going to laugh at the epidemiology of this thing. Like, it spreads so fast. Like for instance, I'll give it a weird corollary. AIDS.
Okay.
So when they found out AIDS was in San Francisco, Montreal, and New York, and some other big city. And
it was a male flight attendant.
Yeah, Gaetan Dugas, the patient zero, they call him, or some people.
Yeah.
And they, how they found out? They went interviewed all these gay men. He said, write down the name of every person you've been with, and that dude was on all 3 or 4 lists. That's how they found out.
Yeah.
So this thing is like, now when you found out, I was at a middle school or junior high in 76, 77. So it's just fascinating to me. You never heard on the TV did they ever say it on the radio?
No, because it was so absurd. Probably
even on the radio they would have said, hey, you kids out there, you heard this ridiculous thing, right?
Right. Well, I hope somebody actually did say that, but I certainly never heard it. It was just among teenagers that went around.
The other urban legends I heard as far as music was Kiss. That Gene Simmons was 6'8", and the heels made him 7'2". And I mean, the stuff they made up about Kiss was like, my friend said this. It sounds like they kept one upping each other. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
And it was like, and when I met Gene Simmons, he's like, we're the same height. You and I and Gene Simmons are the same height, like 6'1" or whatever we are. And I was like, this guy's supposed to be. I mean, he was really nice, but I'm just saying, like the legends and stuff. It just
Right.
this thing fascinates me actually. You
No,
know, you're
I'm with you. And by the way, part of the explanation, the reason why in the 70s those type of urban legends could take off so fast is because all you needed was one or two people who went to see Kiss live in concert and had a good time and were thrilled with the show. When they leave there, just tell some exaggerated,
yeah.
ridiculous story of the crazy things that Kiss did. And I saw Van Halen in 1982. It was a great concert, and David Lee Roth was a wild man on stage. Okay, so if I left that concert and said, "Man, that guy was a wild man on stage," I would be telling the truth. But if I started adding in a few extra things just to make my concert experience better, that I see how people do that. They,
Well, well, did you ever hear? Like, I knew a guy, actually a really cool guy. He worked at this radio station. He was black, which makes this incredible. He said he was at the Doors concert in Miami when Jim Morrison got arrested. That's the other. I mean, there are literally 100 different versions of what he did and did not
right,
do on stage.
right,
And you're
right.
like, what? And then Oliver Stone did it in the movie. It was just like, that's weird. Like,
Well,
anyway,
speaking of Jim Morrison, that my mom and dad lived 30 something years in Palm Bay, which
yeah,
borders on Melbourne, and he went to Melbourne High School. Jim
right.
Morrison did. Okay. The urban legend there is that during some sort of a school assembly, he went up on stage and mooned everybody. I don't know if it really happened or not, but I'm not saying it did, but that's the urban legend there in Melbourne, that he went up on stage and mooned everybody.
So, yeah.
Okay, so just before we get to Rush, one last thing, since we're talking about urban legends, the first time I ever saw that movie, A Christmas Story, which was about 10 years after it was actually released, the first time they said, "Don't get a BB gun, you'll put your eye out." I fell out of my chair laughing so hard because that was the biggest urban legend. During my childhood, I don't think there was a single urban legend bigger than that one, because every year, this probably started when I was in first grade, every year at Christmas time, somebody would say, "Well, I asked my parents for a BB gun, but I know this guy, you know, and he lives next door to this guy named Mark, and Mark's cousin, he, yeah, he knows this other guy, and he put his eye out." Like, no one ever says he shot his eye out. He put his eye out, whatever that means. And every time somebody told that story, it just spread. And pretty soon, everybody told it as if they knew that guy.
Yeah, right.
So when you mention anything about BB gun, 10 people go, "Don't get one, don't get one. You're gonna push your eye. I know this guy." So it's like, oh my God. So that makes that movie priceless for me because of the BB gun.
Because that's that if you what's funny about that, it's a brilliant thing you said, because that is the basis of the Brothers Grimm telling Hansel and Gretel, don't go out in the forest because there's this evil witch
Yeah.
and she cooks kids. And
Right.
the moral of that story is not that that's true. Don't go in the forest.
Right.
It's dangerous in there. And
Right.
so whatever I've got to do to deter the behavior, I'm gonna say it.
Right.
And with this BB gun, you know,
Right. Right.
it's fascinating how these things the boogeyman and all these horrible boogeyman movies. And
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
movie? We'll talk about this later. All right, let's go on to Rush.
Okay,
Sorry.
let's go ahead and start with Rush. So let me start with
You start.
my little introduction to Rush, because we've talked before about being in high school and playing 8-tracks back in the 70s. So my closest friend in high school, a guy named John, had a Mustang with an 8-track player. We played Boston, we played Aerosmith. I mean, we played all the really good mid and late 70s rock. And I don't know how he first heard about Rush. I mean, it's not like they were all over the radio or anything.
At that point, no.
No, definitely not. But somebody had said, "Oh, you got to hear Rush," or I don't know. Somehow he had gotten a Rush 8-track, and I'm pretty sure it was Fly By Night. I'm 99% sure. So the unwritten rule is the guy who's driving, who owns the car, he can dictate what we're going to listen to, you know?
Correct.
So if my opinion had been solicited, I probably would have said, I've never heard of him. I don't want to listen to it, but he played it. And I kind of liked it, you know, I thought it was pretty good. And the song Fly By Night in particular really stood out. I
Yeah.
was like, wow, that's a good song, you know? Now, at that stage, I wasn't familiar with the term progressive rock.
Yeah.
Okay. We've talked about progressive rock before, and I'm sure that we will again. Rush, they were a progressive rock band that also was a hard rock band. So they weren't mixing two genres. They was overlapping them. You know, there are lots of progressive rock bands that aren't really particularly hard rock bands. You know, you could use Pink Floyd as an example.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's lots of them, but Rush is progressive and they play hard rock. So that was my introduction to them, and I wasn't sold or anything, but I said, hey, these guys are pretty good. And that one song, Fly By Night, when that would come on, we would crank it up. Okay. Now, from that point and moving forward, I didn't really hear much more about Rush probably until 1978, which would have been the time of Hemispheres. So before I say anything else, do you have anything to add into that time segment?
No, because I like where you're going with this. Keep going.
Okay. So in 1978, I was a freshman, and there was a record store. I can't think of what it was called now. I'll think of it later. That was within walking distance of where I lived. And they had just opened, and the prices were really fair. They were charging $3-4 for new records. With it, a year later, they had gone up significantly, but when they first opened, they were cheap. And so I remember seeing this Rush album, Hemispheres, and just because I knew Fly By Night, I thought to myself, this might be something I'm interested in. But I flipped it over and looked at it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's 4 songs.
Yes.
Total. Okay.
Cygnus and all that. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
And I'll tell you real quick what they are. The first one is Cygnus X1 Book 2. Okay. Yeah. And of course, they're broken down into different pieces, but there's 4 songs total, and the songs are long. The first one is 18 minutes. The second one is oh gosh, I don't know. I'm looking at it here, but anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, when you're a teenager and you've been listening to Boston and Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones, and the songs are 3 or 4 minutes, and then this album comes out and the songs are 15 and 20 minutes, you go, I don't know how interested I am. You know, listening to longer pieces like that just requires a more mature approach to music. And I don't think at that stage I was ready for that kind of thing. So when I saw the length of those songs, I was a little turned off, and any consideration about buying it, I changed my mind. So I don't want to listen to that. So plus I wasn't hearing any of it on the radio. So for that reason, I didn't follow through, because I initially was going to, but I didn't follow through on that. And then their next album after that was Permanent Waves, 1980. Okay, now this was a watershed moment for me. Okay, you know, we've talked before about how music, or I should be more specific, how a particular song can instantly transport you to a time and place in your life. It's amazing the power of music to do that. I remember, I don't know the exact date of when this album was released, but I remember when I was hearing The Spirit of Radio on the radio, winter was coming to an end and spring was beginning. You know how miserable the winters at Auburn were, cold and rainy. That song practically seemed to be telling the weather, it's time to move on. It's time to change. You know, the sun, the warmth, come on in, baby. We're leaving that cold, rainy thing behind. And that song was just electrifying. I was like, oh my God. I knew who Rush was. I knew Fly By Night, whatever. But this song was magic to me. I listened to it and said, wow, not that I know that much about Rush. I've heard of them. I don't know much. I don't think I even knew their names yet, but this song is special. I mean, it really strikes a chord with me. So I had a feeling, I mean, I don't think the term classic rock even existed yet then, but I had a feeling that that song is going to be one of those that stands the test of time, and 10 and 20 and 30 years from now, it'll still be well known and well established. So I'm going to leave off right there. And then we can move forward after you've had a chance to make your
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when I remember. I'm 4 years younger than you are.
right.
So, and I was just coming into like, remember I got mixed up because Ozzy and Black Sabbath had split up,
Right.
and Bon Scott had died. So that's
Right.
about what I'm starting to learn about classic rock. I've
Okay.
got all the Led Zeppelin albums by like this point, probably like my senior year in high school finally, because I wasn't rich, so I had to save up and work at Tony
Sure.
Roma's. And I had heard Spirit of Radio, and then I can't remember what year '81 Moving Pictures came out.
Correct.
So that would have been my junior into my junior. I can't remember what month it came out. And then Tom Sawyer came on in Limelight. So I said, okay.
Oh, man.
And I went, okay, I like this. And I went and got the album. And when it got to Red Barchetta, I was speechless. And then we got to YYZ. And I was like, well, what's going on here? Like,
Right.
I was like having trouble with, how is this happening? How is this music just like blowing you off your feet? You know, like
Seriously.
and then this, and a lot of people don't know this, but that second side of that album is tremendous, tremendous,
Yeah.
tremendous,
Oh,
tremendous.
yeah.
The Camera Eye, Witches, and I forgot the other one. God, I can't remember now. There's only three songs on the second side of Moving Pictures.
Right. It's
Vital
Camera Eye,
Signs.
Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like so.
Yeah.
I like hearing the second side, believe it or not, as much as the first side. But and then a funny story, Kenny and I used to go to this place to get stereo equipment, tape, audio. Like we make tapes. Kenny and I make all these tapes. And so we went to a couple other places, and like I goes, yeah, with these speakers have a real good bass response. And Kenny would say, Paul, break out the YYZ album or the YYZ tape. And the guy went, uh-oh. As soon as we said that, the people would go, uh-oh. It's gonna get loud. A lot of drums and bass. And so I was like, wow. And that was part of what this album did. It let me know, look, there's Led Zeppelin and great musicianship and Black Sabbath, but there's these other progressive, but these guys who are really serious about.
Right.
And then I knew a lot of musicians in high school and people that knew a lot about, especially older people. And that's when I realized everything I thought I knew before had to be reevaluated.
Right.
Like drumming, and all of a sudden I could, it's a cool term called epistemology, and it's Latin. How do you know something, right? So how do you know? Like at this point, I'm like, God, I don't think anybody else in the world could drum like this, like Neil Peart.
Right.
And then I started talking to people, and I had friends who were like really into Keith Moon, and I love Bonham. He's my number one A. They're both him and Neil Peart. But I was like, wow, this is something else. Like,
yeah,
it's hard to. And I don't know if you know the beginning of the band. There was another guy called John Rutsey. He was the original drummer.
Oh, I did not know that.
And he was on the album. It's called Rush.
Yeah,
Rush.
First one. I think 71. I think it's the first album.
Yeah, so he was like all these songs called like Park. What's the name of that damn song? Anyway, I'm not thinking straight right now. But he was on the seminal Rush song "Working Man."
Oh, right.
That's on this
great song. Yeah.
And so you're like, whoa! Like when you see a song like that, like early, like with Queen, this band has these, these okay other songs, but you're like, oh my God, what's this Working Man thing? And it's mind blowing, right?
Right.
So that guy, I think he had health problems, and he didn't really like touring. So there's this whole cool documentary on Rush, and they had to go through Canada, Canadian, and they found Neil Peart. They're like, oh my God.
Right. Right. Okay, so listen. Oh, and by the way, we got our warning, so we won't go much longer. But you know what? We will definitely continue this with our
Yes.
next show because there's so much more to talk about. Um, I think I mentioned when we talked about Billy Squier a few weeks back that the Rush album came out right around the same time as the Billy Squier album because I'm pretty sure Moving Pictures because I'm pretty sure I recorded those on opposite sides of the same
Oh,
cassette. Yeah,
the
which
90-minute
the
one.
90-minute cassette, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, now keep in mind, I've already described how blown away I was by the spirit of radio. Like this song is special. This is unique. This is not just another rock song. This is a great song. Imagine when I heard Moving Pictures, because after hearing Spirit of Radio, I thought if Rush just fades away and disappears, they've already reached the mountaintop. They don't have anything else to prove. That's how good that song is. Imagine discovering that the Spirit of Radio was a warm up for what was about to come next. Moving Pictures and Tom Sawyer and Lime Lime and YYZ and Red Barchetta. And I'm like, oh my God, these guys have now legitimized themselves as one of the best rock bands in existence. Not just like a good song, they're a great band. And this was the album where the lyrics were on the sleeve, and I was reading the lyrics going, oh my God. Okay, rock bands are often stereotyped, maybe unfairly, as being guys with a high school education or less, and not necessarily a big vocabulary.
And not
Girls,
well read.
girls, girls. Yeah.
And not well
So,
read.
right, this guy, Neil Peart, the drummer, who does almost all of their lyrics, I mean, 90% or more, he's he's an intellectual. I mean, his vocabulary is stunning, mind-boggling, and he writes lyrics that you read them and you go, "Holy crap! What kind of, you know, what kind of genius is this guy? Who thinks up stuff like that?" So I was just blown away by the quality of the music, the quality of the lyrics, the songwriting, obviously the playing, the musicianship, Geddy Lee's vocals, everything. I was like, wow, these guys are unbelievable. And moving forward from there, I knew every Rush album from here on out, I won't be, I can't wait to hear it because now that they've established themselves as being this good. So anyway, um, let's go ahead and wrap it up there for tonight. If you got any final thoughts, please add those in, and then we'll wrap it.
My only final thoughts is that on the liner notes of one of those earlier album Hemispheres, or one of them, I can't remember. Neil Peart writes, "We base these writings on the writings of Ayn Rand."
Oh, you told me that once, right?
And a bunch of the liberal like badasses at Rolling Stone started giving him, and then they had to like tone it down a little bit, and I wish I would have been there for Neil Peart, and I would have been like, "I'll handle this, Neil," right? Because these people are idiots, and Ayn Rand's a genius.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Oh, and I'll just add this. It's not that significant, but I don't know if you remember this, but it was about 4 or 5. I'm gonna say 5 years ago. I saw in the news that morning that Neil Peart had died, and I sent you a text message. I said, "Wow, just saw where Neil Peart," and you said, "Wow, that's really sad." Whatever, So, I mean, it's a sense of loss because their contribution has been so enormous, and especially him writing those amazing lyrics. So you definitely feel a sense of loss when someone like that passes away.
yeah, he was he was one of those people. You ever met these kind of people? You can't really give them a compliment. Like he said, "You're like the best drummer in the world." He goes, "Well, he really downplayed." It was like it's
right.
Some people like that are just instead of saying, "Okay, thank you," like he would downplay. It's like it was kind of weird in a weird way, So it was
just a humble, down to earth guy. You gotta respect that. Okay, well, listen, we'll wrap it up. We're going to continue the Rush show next time because we got a lot still to cover, and this is a great topic. We spent too much time on the urban legends, but that's okay. We enjoy doing it. Okay, this is the Great Classic Rock Debate. I'm Kenny.
I'm Paul.
If you're watching, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will love you for that. Don't forget to check out our sister channel, The Great Classic Movie Debate. Until we meet again, we'll see you next time.